Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of the 21 and Sensory podcast with me, Emily. On today's show, I'd like to talk about a campaign that the National Autistic Society, alongside the teams of world-renowned photographer Rankin and creative agency Ogilvy Health, have launched. So basically, it's a campaign to amplify the voices of autistic women and non-binary people and improve understanding of autism and late diagnosis. The Now I Know campaign features powerful photography of 6 autistic women and non-binary people from across the country who were photographed by Alex Heron, an autistic photographer from Rankin's team, and shared their experiences of late diagnosis of autism. Autistic women and non-binary people can often be overlooked and live without a diagnosis late into life, which can have severe negative impacts on mental and physical well-being. On today's episode, I have special guest Lex Lancaster. Lex is 35 years old and from Salisbury and was one of the 6 autistic people photographed as part of the campaign. I'm super excited to talk to them and find out more about how they got involved with the campaign, as well as more about their life too. So, Lex, would you like to say hello?
Hello, Emily. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
No worries. It's really nice to have someone from the campaign, keen to chat. Let's dive right in. Maybe you could give a little bit more background on yourself. I know obviously I've mentioned where you're from and your age, but maybe just kind of give people a little bit of a background on yourself, and then we could chat about the diagnoses that you have.
Yeah, so background-wise, I'm not really sure what there is to say, but so I've got a lot of siblings, and I grew up undiagnosed autistic until I was 30, and I really struggled sort of growing up being sort of misunderstood by a lot of my family and a lot of friends and things. I was always sort of called dramatic and moody and evil and things like that. And so my background really is, a lot of it is just based around a lot of fear and anxiety, and as well, when I do try to think back to a lot of times in my life, I really can't remember huge chunks of it. A lot of it I was very dissociative, and which is a little bit worrying because there are just years where I don't remember things. So I do struggle to sort of recall a lot of things up until I'm about maybe 20, because it's just so blurred, and I just get told things by family members and stuff. So it's a sort of hard question to answer really with a lot of things. So but that's just a little bit sort of about my background in a way.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. It sounds very difficult, like you say, if you can't, if I'm asking you this question and you can't recall it, I totally understand. So what kind of led you to your autism diagnosis? How did that kind of come about?
So I've been struggling a lot my whole life with mental health, and I was in and out of a mental health facility for quite a few years, and I had a really amazing care worker who sort of worked with me for a couple of years to try and help find out what was going on with me. And a lot of different doctors diagnosed me with lots of different things, and which is very common, as we know. I think there was talk of bipolar, split personality, things like that. I also had the start of an eating disorder. So I was misdiagnosed with a lot of different things, and also put on a lot of drugs. And those drugs actually made me worse. They sort of exasperated everything. And the care worker that I had, she said to me, there's nothing wrong with you, I don't think, because she had a daughter who had just been diagnosed with autism. And she said, I think you're just autistic. And I'd sort of thought about it before that, because I have a sibling who's autistic, and we all had to sort of fill out this form for his diagnosis. And sort of when we were all doing the form, I was like, well, this is me. This is me. And I never really thought much about it. There was just so much going on in my life at the time. Mm-hmm. And then when my care worker said that, and she put me forward to the local unit near me, and I went and did the test, as it was, which was awful, and got the diagnosis. At that point, they were still calling it Asperger's, which I don't that term's not used anymore. I don't like using that term, but it's still obviously autism. So that was the kind of official diagnosis I had. That was coming up for probably 6 years now.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you when you got your diagnosis?
I was 30.
30.
30, okay. Yeah.
And I think I read in the kind of campaign story about you that you said the test was really like, was it kind of like child-based kind of?
Yeah, it was the weirdest thing. I felt so uncomfortable. I had to go into this room, and there on the table there was, toys on there, and they asked me which toy I would play with, and I was like, none.
But
I'm
you're
30.
30.
Yeah, I don't play with toys like
Yeah.
this. And then there was another one where I had to like look at different magazines, and it was like fishing and tractors and stuff like that. And the magazine, I felt like I had to pick something up. I essentially was masking through my autism exam because I was like, well, I've got to pick the right thing. And it was just so awkward and horrible because I didn't want to not be diagnosed with it because I'd done so much research after my care worker had kind of suggested, I think you're autistic. And I was like, well, this is me. It was mind blowing reading all this stuff online. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. So I knew I had it. And so I was just trying my hardest to sort of get an official diagnosis. And I just was like, well, is this what they want me to pick? And I don't know.
Yeah.
And out of the magazines, I do remember picking one that had on the front cover, I think it was like a nature thing. So I was like, well, I like green and nature, so I'll just pick that.
Yeah.
And then they asked me to pretend make a cup of tea. So I had to like do that in the air, just with my hands, just sit there and no. And I was like, well, I put the kettle on. Check the kettle's got water and just talk through the process of making a cup of tea. So that was really odd. And then my mum had to come in for some of it and talk about what I was like as a child, which my mum found really hard as well, because I understand that they have to sort of, there are signs early on, and there definitely was with me at a very young age. And, in the 80s, it wasn't really talked about, obviously. So no one really knew. My mum didn't know about it. So it was missed, obviously. And my mum really struggled to recall a lot of the questions that they asked. They were very much like, what did I do when I was 6? And Mum's like, well, I had 3 kids under the age of 4 at that point. Like she was like, I can't remember it. It was intense. And she was going through her own things as well. So it really was a struggle to get through that. And I still am amazed I actually got the official diagnosis. I think my care worker probably had a lot of stuff in the background to kind of help me get it. But it was a very weird experience, which I wouldn't want to go through again.
And do you feel like, did your mum or like the rest of your family kind of feel guilty for the fact that they'd missed it, or that you'd been kind of so late diagnosed at all?
I think my mum, I think my mum probably does. My mum as well, we're pretty certain she's got autism, and, she's really sort of coming to terms with that at the age of, she's in her 60s, and that's really hard for her to sort of deal with now as a 60-year-old who's been masking their whole life. And, I've got it, one of my brothers has as well. And so it sort of makes sense. And we look back at some other members of the family and we're like, you know what? This is, it's obvious now. Yeah. It's really obvious that it's here. And, which is great. But I think definitely my mum probably had a lot of guilt, about it being missed. And just the way as well, I think my whole family sort of put me in a box of being, like I said earlier, miserable and moody and evil and lashing out. And I remember once someone in my family calling me a volcano, that I'd be really still and then I just erupt out of nowhere. And I was like, well, it wasn't out of nowhere. I was obviously, my threshold had been reached and then I blew up. So it was just a meltdown or whatever. So it all makes sense now. Totally makes sense. Yeah.
It's kind of interesting as well. You're saying that like when your brother was going through the diagnosis, that you could like see stuff on the form that kind of related to you. And then you were going through the diagnosis and your mum can see stuff that's kind of, it's almost like it's stemmed and you can like trace it through the whole kind of family.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So I also wanted to talk to you about you being non-binary. And obviously this campaign includes both kind of autistic women and non-binary people. And again, I read in your campaign story that it's only kind of the last year and a half that you've kind of been living as you are now. Is that right?
Yeah. So I've pretty much, I think since about 31, I sort of started coming into the world of queerness, really. And, I've had gay friends and things in the past, but it was really when I started, I was in really intense therapy. And I mean, for context, let's say the whole story, because I'm autistic, I have to give you all the context of everything.
Please do.
So I can't just tell you a snippet. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I went through a really, really bad stage of my life. I was, I was at the peak of my eating disorder. It was completely ruling my life. I was in a mentally abusive relationship. I'd been in really awful relationships in the past. I'd struggled with jobs. And I was having like suicide ideation and things like that. And I had a very severe time, and my family didn't know what to do. And it was awful, really. And I found a therapist, and I started doing therapy twice a week and things like that. And it was very intense. It was extremely difficult. I did not want to deal with anything. I was ready to check out. I was done. And at that point as well, I hadn't really fully sort of, I probably was around 31 at this point. And even though I had my autism diagnosis, because I was in that abusive relationship, I didn't really get a chance to explore it. Sort of like I got it and then that was it. And the person I was with in that relationship made me feel really bad for having autism and kept calling me disabled, and just really obviously evil and horrible. So I hadn't really dealt with even my autism. It's only really the last 2 years I've really lent into it. So I was still sort of masking that as well. And then I had this huge breakdown, started therapy. And that's when I started really picking away at myself and picking away at my past and everything that I'd been doing and how I'd been living. And I found Drag Race. And actually, RuPaul's Drag Race has really opened up my world massively for me. I'd never heard the term non-binary until I was about 31 or 32. And when I first heard it and I started researching it, I was like, this is how I've always felt. I've always felt like I've been failing my whole life as being a girl or a woman. I always tried to do it and live up to, society's expectation of what that means to be a girl or a woman. And in relationships, what my role was in a relationship with a man as the woman. And I always felt I was failing and I could never consistently keep at those sort of roles because it wasn't who I am. So it really, being non-binary, I was just like, this is it. I don't want to be seen as male or female. This is how it really just feels so true for me to be in this identity now. So yeah, it was a long sort of journey to get to that point of realizing that.
Mm-hmm. And how do you find kind of like with the pronouns of they, them, those are your pronouns. So how have you found kind of, I don't know, like coming to terms with that yourself and knowing that that's kind of what you want to be referred to as, but how have you found like other people when you say like, can you refer to me like this? Like, is it quite difficult for people to kind of change how they kind of see and refer to you?
Yeah, so for me, I'd never really thought about pronouns before. I was starting to hear the word non-binary and trans and really fall into this world hugely online and see all these different stories. And then I watched something about pronouns. I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'd never thought, like the word she and her for me is actually quite triggering. If someone says it to me now, I do feel it just brings up a lot of stuff from the past, and it's sort of, I feel like I'm being put into a box. So for me, when I first started telling people that I wanted to be they, them, I was like, this is exciting. Feels great. And when people get it right, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so happy. It just fills me with so much joy that I've been gendered correctly. Mm-hmm. And when people get it wrong, I understand sometimes it is difficult, but it's a conversation I'm so sick of having with people now about getting it right. It's such a boring conversation. And the majority of my people in my family have been really good. There's some that haven't at all and will not, and that's fine. I just don't give energy to those people anymore. I've spent so much of my life giving energy to the wrong people. So I just don't acknowledge it. And I will say now, it's not a conversation I'm having because I've said why I want it, why it's important to me. Yeah. I think if you respect somebody and you care about them, just do it. It doesn't hurt anybody to say their pronouns. And I think just small steps as well for, like on your profiles and in email signatures.
Yeah.
And even when you meet people, I think just saying, oh, hi, I'm Lex, these are my pronouns, it can make the other person feel really included and just like, oh, okay, that's cool that they said their pronouns. I'm going to say mine. Just normalize saying our pronouns, which I think is really important, rather than getting them wrong. And then, if someone gets mine wrong, it does hurt. It physically hurts me.
Yeah.
But it has been a big change, and I get that. Like, I've changed my name, I've changed my hair, I've changed how I dress. Everything is now me. And to go from one extreme and living as I was before for 31, 32 years, it's, that obviously is a lot to sort of happen in a year. I get it. But at the same time, it's just, like I said, it's just not something I want to keep arguing with people about anymore, because it's just be respectful, I think.
Yeah. And what was that kind of process like as well? Like you said, you've changed how you kind of dress and your hair and stuff like that. Like, do you feel more you now? Like, do you feel like happier in yourself because you've kind of found yourself more through kind of diagnoses and also, how you look and feel?
Yeah, definitely. So much. I can't even put it into words sometimes. And there are times when I catch myself in the mirror and I think, oh, is that what oh my gosh, I look really masculine, not as in I want to look like a man, just the masculinity sort of side of that I'm definitely more drawn to. And I just catch it sometimes. I think I look like my brother. Or I think I really look like one of my brothers now with certain haircuts and things.
Okay.
So it is quite funny. And I've looked like my sisters before and I look like my brothers. So it is very funny. But yeah, it's just nice to be in a place now where I do feel definitely more authentic. And I think the people who really care about me and things have seen the change. And my mum will get very emotional about it, and she's very supportive. And she will say, I think somebody asked her once before, how was it for her with me, going through all this? And she just said, you know what? I've always knew that this person was in there. I just didn't understand it. I didn't know, and I couldn't work it out. And when my mum sees me now, and she just says to me, she's like, this is the person you always were. I just knew it, but I didn't know it was there. So she always had a feeling, and that's just nice to have that sort of support, really. It means a lot.
And it's nice that your mum she had that inkling almost, that, obviously it's something for you to work through and you to kind of come to terms with before.
Yeah, I don't think she ever knew that she didn't know about non-binary things. I'm not sure she knew it in that sense, but I think she just knew that the person I was being before, she could obviously see I was struggling. Everyone could. And I think she just didn't know what it was meant to look like, really. And then when I started transitioning and doing those things, she was like, okay, yeah, this makes sense. So it's just lovely to sort of be where I am now. And when on my Instagram, you can see some videos of me through having my hair transition, and I did it in stages because it was a very dramatic change. I didn't want to just freak myself out. So I hadn't had my hair cut in 7 years.
Okay.
When I did the first haircut. Because I hated going to hair salons and things like that. So it was in stages to get to sort of where I am now with it. Okay. But yeah, it was a huge change, massive.
That's a good idea, because I feel like obviously there's the autistic side where you're change is really unsettling, but also you want to get to the stage of where you want your hair to look. So it sounds like you did the right thing by doing it in stages.
Yeah, definitely. And I found, because I've always been sort of traumatized by hairdressers, I hate going to them. And I mean, for 15 years, I had bright purple hair for 15 years. And when I got to about 29, 30, I stopped dyeing it and left it its natural color and left it really long. And I was like, I don't want to go to a normal hair salon, because it's loud and they talk to you about small talk, and it was just, ugh. Yeah. So my sister found me a non-gendered hair salon. So they charge, most women get charged more for having long hair and stuff, and the prices are the same no matter what gender. It's really inclusive, and they're all sort of they're just so welcoming and supportive. And Lam, who does my hair, she's incredible, and she really has supported me through the whole stage. Like, I told her where I want to get to. She's like, right, let's do it in stages, baby steps. We'll ease you into it. And it was just nice having that rather than just going to a normal hair salon. It was just, I think having that includes me feeling like I'm really included in all of this was great.
And I feel like a normal hair salon, they're trying to like get you in, get you out kind of thing, whereas it sounds like they actually wanted to get to know you at this.
Yeah, and they have, and they're all so lovely. Everyone there, like, I take my dog Crumpet with me to the hair salon. Like, she comes in and they've like shared my GoFundMe page, and they're all so supportive. It isn't just in and out, as you said. It's going in, having a proper catch up, and they're just really nice, really, really nice.
Well, that's great. And you mentioned your GoFundMe. So obviously, like, as part of this process, you're looking to get top surgery. Would you like to explain a little bit more about what that is in case people don't know what it is? And just the whole kind of waiting time thing around it.
So top surgery is essentially having my chest aligned with how I feel inside myself. So currently my chest, when I look at it's not me. I look down at my chest and I think, I don't know, I don't want it to look like this. This isn't how I feel. I've got a lot of body dysmorphia, which I've had pretty much my whole life. And I want surgery to align it with how I feel. So I want a flat chest because it's I don't know how to explain it really to somebody who maybe hasn't felt that they want to change something on their body. I'm not really sure, but I just know in my gut, and this is how I want to feel. Because for me, the way my chest is now, it has a lot of negativity around it as well. It's, people automatically assume my gender if they see I have this chest that I have, and I do wear a binder, and it's just assumptions being put on me all the time. If people hear my voice on the phone without actually looking at me, they think, they'll assume my gender and things like that. So my chest currently for me it's just problematic. I just don't like it at all. And I don't really look at my chest. I try not to acknowledge it. And I have talked about it a lot in therapy and getting to the point of actually deciding to go ahead and book top surgery. This isn't like a reactionary thing of being non-binary as well. When I look back at my life, it really makes sense in a lot of situations. I've never liked this chest that I have now. So I've been probably talking about it in therapy for 2 years. And then this year I made the decision to fully book it in, which is in January. So not long, it's like 3 months. So, so I've been raising, trying to get people to donate to my GoFundMe. Because currently the waiting list in the UK for any sort of gender affirming surgery is sort of between 5 to 7 years, I think, at the moment. And it's only going to climb up and up and up. Yeah. And it was just not long enough, for anyone really. It's too long. And I did go to my doctor about it, and I've been on the waiting list already for 2 years. And, I've had to, do it privately myself and pay a lot of money. And because I can't keep waiting. And, I think I'm going to be 40 in the next 4 years. I don't want to be in my 40s and still feel as I do. It does unfortunately force a lot of people to go privately. And, some people are very lucky to afford it straight away and things like that. And there are so many people out there, though, doing GoFundMes, and it's, they shouldn't have to do that. Gender affirming healthcare should be a priority for so many people. They shouldn't have to wait this long, because it truly does save lives. If I was to keep living as I am now for another 3, 4, even 2 years, the thought of that for me is painful. And I just think, I just don't want to live like that. I really, really don't want to keep living like this. Because I'm making so much progress in other areas of my life, being authentically me. And I still feel like there's a huge part of me that's stuck in this old life or this life that just isn't me. And it's really hard. And it's constantly having body dysmorphia issues every day is not healthy, as we know. So it's unfortunately, it's a huge systematic problem. there isn't going to be change straight away for these waiting lists to reduce. We need to be petitioning, we need to be contacting government and things like that. That's where the changes happen. And obviously the NHS needs better funding, as we know, in loads of different areas, not just gender affirming healthcare. So it's a huge problem. There's probably not an easy answer, of course, but I think just bringing more awareness to these issues does create sort of movement and hopefully create real sort of change.
And I'll make sure to link your GoFundMe in case anyone's interested. It's really interesting for me to hear, like you said, like I don't have this experience, but I think if I was to look down at myself and I didn't feel myself, then I can totally understand how, weird it must feel, and how, it's kind of part of the process of understanding yourself, that if you look at yourself and it doesn't feel like you, then, and you've obviously worked through it quite a bit, I feel like there's often this misconception of people rushing to be like, I have transitioned and I want, I'm going to do surgery. And I feel like that's how it's almost portrayed in the news quite a lot, is like people like rushing into things. But I feel like a lot of people actually really do consider it or work through it in therapy like you have done. And it sounds like for you, it's the best way forward. And like you said, you've come like so far in so many other areas that this will only help, kind of thing. That's really lovely to hear that you're excited for it. And obviously you shouldn't have to fundraise to do it, but hopefully it will get you there quicker. And that's the annoying thing about having to go kind of private, is it gets you there quicker, but it's so expensive.
It's expensive, but I'm investing in myself. I've never really invested in myself, and that's how I sort of look at it. It is a huge thing to do, and I'm not sitting here and being like, I'm so excited. Yeah, I am excited about it, but I'm absolutely terrified as well. That is a huge part of it. I am petrified. I'm taking a part of my body away that I've had since I was, I don't know, 14 maybe, I don't remember, but it's a huge part of me that is not going to be there anymore. And then having to learn to live as with like a new part of my body is intense. I can imagine it, as best as I can. And I think about it every day, and I watch a lot of other videos of people who have had the surgeries and what they talk about, and to sort of prepare myself as best as I can, but I'm never going to know how I feel. And I know there are people out there who've said to me, why are you doing it? And are you sure? And it's like, yes, I'm sure. Obviously, this isn't, I wouldn't spend this much money and go through a huge surgery if I wasn't sure. And, for people who say, oh, you might regret it. And I understand that. There's always a risk of that. I'm not saying there is never a risk of not regretting it, but I think there's more regret on the side of not doing it for me. Okay. When I look at it, if there was like a line, I'm very visual when I think about things. So I move my arms and like talking. Obviously, you can't see what I'm thinking. So I'm just like imagining a line, and on the left-hand side is like a ball of regret if I don't, and the other side is a ball of regret if I did and I didn't like it. The ball on the right is so small. If I don't do it, I'm probably going to be more miserable and not live a full life, because that's just more of a risk for me on that side. And that's what I say to people, if I don't do it, I'm going to regret it more. And I just know that it's going to be fine. I've got so many t-shirts waiting for me to wear them.
Oh, really?
that I can't wear right now. And I think another thing I just wanted to talk about with top surgery. So I wear a binder, which sort of creates a very sort of flat chest in a way. And for anyone who's never worn a binder, they're extremely uncomfortable.
They sound it.
They're very, very uncomfortable. My posture's got really bad since I've been wearing one. I've been wearing one probably over 2 years now. And but for me, as an autistic person who's very sensory, the binder is great. It gives me the illusion of a flat chest, but at the same time, it's extremely overwhelming and sensory loaded. The texture of it isn't very nice. It's very restricting. I can't move around a lot in it. It hurts my neck. And so it's really conflicting. with wearing the binder. You know, I love wearing it and the euphoria I have when I put it on, and I just put a t-shirt on and people say to me, all right, mate. And I'm like, oh, I never got called mate when they thought I was a woman.
Yeah.
Like, it's brilliant. I'm like, oh my God. And then every time someone says that to me, like in a shop, they're like, all right, mate. I go, yeah. I like really girly my voice
just to make a
freak
point.
them out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, thank you. It's just, and their faces are just amazing. I love doing that. And but yeah, the sort of confliction through having that extreme euphoria feeling and then coming home after wearing it for maybe 8 or 9 hours, which is not recommended at all. But if, say, I've been out for the day, I come back and take it off and I'm like, oh, the relief.
Yeah.
And I look down at my chest and I'm like, it feels good taking it off, but I also hate what I'm seeing right now. Yeah. It's so confusing. It's like a minefield to navigate those emotions and those feelings. Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's a really hard part that I really struggle with, the sensory side of it. And there are days when I look at my binder and I'm like, I'll wear it today because I'm feeling really dysphoric, but I physically can't put it on because I'm so overwhelmed. Maybe the day before I was out and there was noise and people or whatever, and I'm just so sensory overloaded and I'm like, I can't physically put it on, which ultimately makes me feel worse.
Yeah, like you can't be yourself.
Yeah.
Because you've got almost like this autistic side, but almost this side where you're like, but for my identity, I need to. Like, that's so tricky. Like having to weigh up what. Yeah,
it's really, really, it is a proper minefield. And that's really not a lot of the side I've seen talked about on TikTok or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to have non-binary and trans people's stories, with autism and these sorts of experiences, because, you can live a normal life, but if you add autism to that, it's an extra level of everything you have to navigate through. So, and it makes it 10 times harder. So it is really difficult. I know a lot of people say, oh, you look so much happier, and that's me masking, obviously. But yeah, I think that's an important part of kind of talking about my sort of journey and the non-binary side of it and transitioning and having surgery and things. I think that, there's other people out there who have the same experience with all the sensory issues that come with it.
Yeah. And in terms of just kind of going back to the surgery again, what's the kind of like recovery time like? And obviously like sensory issues with that as well, I guess, potentially.
Yeah, that's my biggest fear is recovery. So weighing up the actual surgery, fine. The surgeon's amazing. He does lots of these operations every week. And I've actually spoken to people who've had him as a surgeon and things like that. And I've met people through TikTok and stuff. So I've seen his work and I'm very happy with my surgeon. But yeah, the recovery it's about 2 weeks really. It's not too bad. So the first week is probably the most intense. I won't be able to do anything at all, which is horrible. Yeah. So I have to sleep upright, sitting upright, which is not going to be good because I'm a big sleeper. I need at least 8-9 hours a day to literally function and do anything. I live alone, so everything is in an exact place, and so I have to have someone look after me and wash me. I can't lift my arms up. I can't walk upstairs.
Oh wow!
So my mum's going to have to move in with me for a week. It's probably mostly the first week this is going to happen. So my mum will move in with me, which I was trying to think of someone who I would want to come and do all these things, like, because I don't like being physically touched either. So that's a huge thing, because I don't want people touching me unless I say, can I have a hug? Which is probably a couple of times a year. So I don't want, and so having, I can't remember the last time I hugged my mum, like ever. So it's been a long time. So having to wash my hair and, somebody wash me down with a cloth and walk my dog and feed her, and I won't be able to cuddle Crumpet probably for a couple of weeks. And I still have to wear a binder after the surgery, obviously for compression and things like that. So yeah, it's going to be a couple of weeks before I'm probably doing things. And I think it's about 6-8 weeks before I can swim and do things like that, which is fine. So yeah, that is the hardest part, is essentially losing control.
Yeah. And your own environment, having someone else kind of take over it. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, everything has to be exactly, especially my house, like everything has a place. Everyone comes in, they're like, you're so tidy. I'm like, and I don't really have a lot of stuff. I don't need things that much, but it's something very simple, like making the bed. Like I cannot leave my house unless my bed is made in the morning. Mm-hmm. It's the first thing I do is make my bed. The size has to be tucked down properly. So my mum's going to have to do that. And if she's not tucking it exactly how
you're going to be like
yeah, that pillow's not quite right. And I know I'm going to have to let a lot of stuff go, which is hard. But in the lead up to my surgery and the weeks after, I'm upping my therapy sessions as well with that.
Okay, that's
because,
good.
Yeah, I think, that's important for me to have a place where I can vent about it or talk through all my feelings, because there's going to be a lot of stuff coming up. I imagine me crying a lot of the time. And pain and stuff I'm not worried about that. My pain threshold's pretty high.
Okay.
That side of it, I'm not too fussed about. Mm-hmm. I think it's just the ability of not being able to move and walk around and things. Yeah.
Just having your daily routine messed up sounds like enough of a change.
Oh, I know. Someone's going to have to cook for me, and if the broccoli's not cooked exactly how I like, I'm not going to enjoy it. I've said to my mum, I apologise. I'm really sorry for the things I'm going to say when I've had the surgery. And she's like, it's absolutely fine. She's like, I totally get it. I was like, but I'm just apologising now, and then I'll apologise after.
Again, yeah.
I was like, I'll forever be sorry. So, yeah.
Oh, bless. I'm sure, it sounds like she's understanding, though. She knows it's your space and stuff. Bless. And I kind of feel like, obviously, we've talked a lot about you, but I'd like to know how...
About Crumpet, is that what you're going to
say? Well, I obviously want to know about Crumpet, hugely, massively into dogs. I was going to ask you how you got involved with the campaign. Maybe we'll do that first and then Crumpet.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So I first saw the advert, I guess you call it an advert, for the campaign on Instagram, on National Autistic Society, on their story on Instagram. So I think it was like a form to fill out, and you just write a bit about yourself as well and your experiences. So I wrote a lot because I can't just write a little. So it's like a book, probably. So I wrote to them about being non-binary and the things I struggled with in the past, like eating disorder and being very vulnerable to abusive people and stuff like that, and my school experience. And then I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later, they sent me an email saying they would like to sort of have me be part of the campaign and 5 other people as well. So we communicated over email a little bit, and then I had a phone call with a couple of the team, just initially talk about the potential date they would come and do the photograph and sort of the process and what their plan was. And that's when I got told, so Alex Heron, who did the photograph, she's incredible. So when I was told that she had autism as well, and it was, that's really, they were basing sort of the campaign around her and building it around her. Mm. I was just like, that's so cool. That made me feel so much better knowing that she had autism. Like, this is a truly autistic sort of campaign. This is truly just based around autistic people when they had, autistic people in the background and things like that. So yeah, I was very excited. It didn't really feel real. Still doesn't sort of feel real. It's one of those things where I'm slightly disassociating a little bit because it's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they all came to the house, and that was a whirlwind because I don't really have people come over, and it was like 8 people in my home, and Crumpet was like, oh my God, what's going on? But they were great. They were so, in advance, they asked me, do I want them to keep their shoes on and off? They asked me loads of things like that. Okay. And I think I'm pretty chill. So, and I don't mind shoes on and things like that. That's fine. Yeah. And then I was like, I'm more than happy for you to touch things and move them about because I love putting things away and tidying up. So I'll enjoy that bit afterwards. But yeah, they came in, they set up kind of where they wanted it, with all my plants. So I've got a lot of natural light where I live and things. So I moved all my plants down and they sort of set the scene up, and we did a few tests, and Crumpet was in it, obviously. And yeah, so it was it was just so much fun. It really was a lot of fun. It was overwhelming. And like when they all left, I'd had 8 people in here for like 2, 3, 4 hours. I can't remember.
Okay.
And they all left. I was just like, oh my gosh, just sit down and breathe. And I just went sort of like, I just sort of shut down a little bit, because it was, and you know, I've never had that sort of experience where, you know, the interview was very intense. Mm-hmm. I cried pretty much through the whole thing. I think you can probably see that a bit from my video. You know, you can hear it in my voice and see it in my eyes. So it was very tearful. And I said a bit in my interview that I've never really felt like anyone's wanted to hear anything I have to say ever. And having a group of people come to my home and it be about me, and then really genuinely be interested in my story, I couldn't deal with it. I sort of don't know how to deal with that sort of kindness and things, and which is sad in a way, you know, to be nearly 36, and when people want to do nice things, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with it, and I want to run away. That's a very common experience for a lot of autistic people, to have that, you know, to have that sort of scared to be, you know, loved and seen. And I am trying to lean into it, and it's something I'm constantly working through in therapy about, you know, having acceptance that people do care about me and things like that. So it was just really great. The whole team were brilliant. I can't thank them enough for, you know, picking me out of thousands of people that applied. You know, I'd never thought for a second that they would pick me ever. I think it's because of Crumpet. But, you know, she's the true hero of the campaign.
Excellent. And I really like that as well, like you were in control of the photo. So I don't know if you want to explain that, because like initially I looked at the photo, like looked through all the group, and I was like, they're all holding something. And it wasn't until I read and like understood like why. I don't know if you want to explain that as well.
Yeah, so they wanted to essentially do it as a self-portrait. You know, well, obviously Alex was a photographer, like setting it all up with the lighting and the thing. And like she'd set the camera up for the position. And we do some trial ones just to see, you know, lighting was okay and things, and the composition and stuff. So, I think it was just giving the control, you know, to us, because that's what the campaign was. It was our own stories. It wasn't someone coming in, you know, photographing us and just sort of leaving. It was us deciding, you know, I want it here. I sort of, you know, this is what represents me. This is a pose that is just me. And I think having that control, like there's not one photo I really like of myself apart from this. Like this is going to be my photo for everything. And I don't really have any photos of me and Crumpet together either. So it's really nice to have one of us together. And so, I think just having that little, but like I don't know what they would call it, the little button thing that you'd hold to take the shot. It was really nice sort of having it down as a self-portrait, really. You know, it's as if, you know, I've set it up, I've sat down, I've just gone tick and taken my own picture. So it's like one of those old-fashioned cameras where they hold it, like the thing really far away. It was nice to sort of give the control back to the people the campaign's about, really.
Oh, that's really good. And it's nice that they kind of gave you that sort of opportunity, and that also you didn't feel like you had to like pose, or like, I feel like for like photo shoots, it's very kind of, you're putting on your best face, your best, I don't know, side even, but like the fact that you kind of were in your own space and with Crumpet, and like you felt kind of, you know, yourself, that's quite nice. That actually, that photo, when I look at it, I'm like, oh, that's actually you.
I when they all got here, we were like setting up, I was like, I don't have to smile. I don't enjoy smiling, really. Like I do in conversations and things, but I don't walk around with a big friggin' smile on my face. Like my natural pose is that photo. That is my face. That is just my face. And my whole life, I've been told I look miserable, I look moody. What's the matter with you? Smile more. Blah, all that rubbish. Especially women are told. You know, women are especially told to smile more and be pretty and all those things. And you're just like, no, go away.
It's not me.
I'm not miserable, you know. And I know some people will probably look at a picture and think, like a friend came over the other day and I showed them the picture and they were like, why didn't you smile? I was like, what? This is exactly what I mean. This is exactly what I mean. Like this, I sit at home with that face because that is my face.
Yeah, it's you.
And that was, when I thought that, because I'd sort of thought in the build up to it, like, I'm gonna smile, and I was like, oh my gosh, no, I don't need to. This is about me. And I think my face and Crumpet's are just so good. Like, we are so in tune with each other. And there's another sort of photo as well that they took. Obviously they took loads. We were just, as I was moving around and trying different things, when me and Crumpet, I think we both looked to the left. We literally look and then look back again at like Alex, and they're like, it's so funny, you're just both doing the same things. So yeah, she was really good. But yeah, not feeling like I have to smile. And I didn't have to dress up. I just wore jeans and a black t-shirt, and I'm a no socks autistic person.
I see.
So definitely no socks in the picture, and nothing on my feet at all. So it was just nice. I was just so relaxed.
Oh, that's
and
great.
I was just like, yeah, I'm not smiling. I am not smiling. All those forced photos of me as a kid smiling, you can tell, you know what it's like.
Yeah, you're right. It's just, I don't know why we're always asked to like, be our best selves for like photos and stuff, or like, as like smile and stuff, when it's not really, it feels like the most unnatural thing to be like, smile.
It's not a natural thing, is it? It's really, you can smile, you can have happy. It's like when people say, oh, you should be happy. Well, I truly don't believe you can be happy all the time. You just can't. It's not real. You can have happy moments, and I think I kind of prefer the word content to happy. I'd rather just be content with what I've got and what I'm doing, and and just being forced to smile. And I think it's just a huge thing for women, especially being told to smile, and that's a very old-fashioned sort of thing that women were told by men. Smiling at pretty, you've got to be reasonable, and so it was nice. Definitely not to smile. That is not my natural face at all, and I'm not moody. If anyone ever sees me, I look like that. That's just me.
It's just you.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's just my face.
So coming back to the star of the campaign, Crumpet,
of course,
please do tell me more.
She's amazing. Everyone loved her when they came around as well. It was great. She is my absolute support animal. I've had a lot of dogs over the years. I did have 4 at one point. And Crumpet was the baby. Now she's an old lady. I think I've been just me and Crumpet now. It's just been us for 3 years since one of my last dogs, my collie, died. It's been a big change, just me and her, because we've always had other dogs, and I think she found that sort of transition from losing my last dog Willow to being the only dog, and then it was just me and her, and then we moved house like soon after Willow died, so it was a lot happening, and she got really just kind of distraught. And she's my little support animal for sure, and I wish that she could be an official support dog, but she can't. I think she could, but it's a long process, and she's nearly 40. She doesn't want to be doing tests and stuff now, and she's fine. But she's very good at picking up on my anxieties.
Okay.
And when we were doing the photo shoot, to start with, she was asleep on my lap, curled up, like led down, and that was to sort of try and regulate me a little bit, because I was obviously very anxious, and she just becomes like a solid dead weight on me. Like, there's a difference. It's hard to explain. Like, sometimes I'll hug her and she feels light, but then there are times where I feel like she's trying to regulate me, and she just feels like she becomes heavier and like weighted.
Okay, like a weighted blanket kind of.
She is, and she'll come and sit on me, and she's like, okay, just chill. And I think that's her trying to communicate with me, and she just knows. There was a point when we were doing the film and stuff where I was getting shaky and just adrenaline of emotions and stuff, and it was really hard to talk, and I had to take a break for a little bit and just sort of calm down. And Crumpet just stares at me the whole time. She's just like, it's like she's saying, are you okay? Like, does this need to stop right now? And I just look at her, I'm like, it's all right. And we just got such a great bond, and I'm very lucky to have her. I cherish every moment I have with her, because she's an old grumpy lady now. So she's currently asleep, so I don't want to disturb her.
No, that's okay. And so I kind of got a sense, obviously, and you mentioned as well that like kind of some of your sort of interests are kind of like plants and things like that. I always like to ask my guests more about like if they have any special interests or just hobbies in general. So you want to kind of talk a little bit more around that, and maybe plants? I'm also a big plant person.
Oh, are you? Great. Yeah. I can see you've got like that plant picture in the back. Yeah.
Yeah, a couple.
Just a few. So yeah, plants. For me, I never really was interested in like house plants. I mean, I've always loved nature. Always loved being outside. I mean, I could walk for days and days and days and days. I mean, there was one year I walked over like 3,000 miles. Whoa. So yeah, I walk a lot. So that's how I de-stress. That's how I decompress and everything. So that's essentially my stim. Walking is a huge stim for me. So I never really had a lot of house plants and stuff like in my 20s and things like that. And I think what happened, I had to move into a city for a little bit. It was like COVID and stuff, and the house I was in was being sold and things. And so it was, trying to move in the middle of COVID was crazy. Trying to find rented accommodation with a dog, it was just wild. So I moved to a city and it was fine. I was only there for, I think, 8 months or so, and it served its purpose. But when I moved there, I really got into houseplants. And I think that's because I wasn't around nature. I wasn't in the countryside. And I've always lived near, like really on the doorstep of the countryside, like in a village and stuff. So I think that's what happened. And I didn't realize at the time. I was like, I just love plants now. And I was like, oh no, it's because I don't have...
You're like compensating, kind of.
Yeah. Like, it's because I'm surrounded by cars and noise and buildings. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, this is why. So I come home and it was a literal jungle. All my walls were green. Everything was just green. That's my favourite colour. And it sort of stemmed from there, really. And I just sort of kept it up, and I've lost a few plants on the way, as you do, and gained a lot more and stuff. So I don't even know how many I've got now, 60 something maybe.
Whoa.
Yeah, I haven't counted for a while.
Amazing.
So, yeah, probably something around that maybe. So yeah, that's been, I guess you'd call that a hobby, really. I just like, looking at them and making sure they stay alive.
Yeah,
that's really hard to do.
The pressure. Oh my god.
I know. And you lose one, it starts to die. You're like, oh my god.
You're like, have I underwatered, overwatered, or just? I don't know.
I know. It's when you Google it, isn't it? When you Google like, why has it got this? It's like, well, it's either underwatered, over, and it's like, okay, well, that's literally every option for every plant.
It's not communicating this to me.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's definitely been, I guess, more of a hobby. And another sort of interest, I mean, I think this is quite common for a lot of autistic people, is my own mental health is a huge fixation. I am obsessed with my brain and how it works. And I'm constantly having like these little epiphanies every week where I have these huge realizations about things.
Okay.
And because I love to just work, I sit for ages and just work stuff out in my brain. I'm like, why do I do that? What's the, I don't just do this for a reason. There's something behind this. And I sort of unpack it and unpick it in therapy. And I'm like, oh, right, okay, this makes sense. And so, yeah, I think autism for me is a special interest. Non-binary things, stuff like that. I'm starting to just find more and more. I don't think, I've never been someone who has just one super interest forever. Yeah. Dogs has always been a theme throughout my life, for sure. I mean, when I was a kid, Mum said I used to pretend to be a dog for years and years. I have to eat out of a bowl. Okay. Like, drink out of a bowl, crawl on all fours. That's probably why I got bad knees, because I just crawled around for years because I wanted a dog. And eventually we got one. And so dogs have always been there, animals for sure, especially dogs. And just have a nice connection with them. So, but yeah, I think mental health, autism, and queer-related stuff is really just becoming such a huge part of my life at the moment.
That's nice. It's nice that you feel you can explore that stuff, like, and really kind of, I don't know, get to know yourself almost. Which sounds crazy if like you're kind of in your 30s, but it sounds like you are really getting to know yourself.
Yeah, it's really strange because when I was younger, I used to say to a friend of mine, I would have been probably early 20s, and I used to say to her all the time, I can't wait to be in my 30s. I can't wait. I just knew, I don't know how to describe it. It's like when a lot of autistic people, I think, well, I do especially, I always thought I was psychic, and it wasn't. It was just pattern recognition. Now I'm learning that. I wasn't psychic. I just could see like what's going to happen. And I always said I wanted to be in my 30s. I just knew that I'd be okay once I got there. And the start of my 30s was very difficult, but actually the lower end of my 30s now, I'm really leaning into who I am. And it's difficult some days. It really is very hard to battle with my inner child and acknowledge my inner child, because for many years I wouldn't even think about me as a kid. And it was just too hard to even imagine. So yeah, it is a battle continuously. And actually, battle's probably the wrong word. That sounds like it's really negative, but it's something I work at. Dealing with my inner child and learning about myself at the same time, while acknowledging that the inner child in me is still essentially a little girl, because that's where all my feelings were. I was told I was a little girl. I was brought up as a girl, so it's very confusing. And I'm still learning that. And I might sometimes say things that aren't quite right about it, but that's just part of the process of getting to the place where I am more authentically me. And I think that's what you have to think about. A lot of people at the start of their diagnosis, or when they're really exploring it, they might say or do things that they might change their mind about later, and that's okay. I think that's absolutely fine, because it's such a minefield, when you're trying to learn who you are, especially later in life, when you've been, I've been masking my whole life. I don't even know really sometimes who I am without that. That I am slowly trying to learn to unmask, but it is difficult. It really is very hard, because it's so ingrained in me to be a specific way. So yeah, I think you have to just, be careful with people and just allow them the space to sort of explore all those different parts of who they could be. Because it's hard. It's really hard and overwhelming.
And also, I feel like I've said this before, but like when I came out of my autism assessment, I came out and I was like, oh, the world's going to change. I know this about myself. And spoiler alert, it just doesn't. Nothing. You feel like the world might change around you because you know something more about yourself. But actually, it's a lot of you work. It's a lot of you realizing stuff about your childhood, but also you realizing why you do things a certain way, or why people say things about you, and you're like, oh, that I don't relate to that. But actually, I don't know, I feel like it should be more on other people to do things, not just it's so much self-work to get a diagnosis, whereas I'm like, why isn't the rest of the world accommodating?
It is hard, because I think you're spot on with it, because it's so much internal work you have to do, and people don't realize that you're doing it all the time, and it's constant and it's draining. And it's I think most of the time autistic people, they're not, we aren't saying we want the whole world to change and accommodate us completely in every aspect, because that's never going to happen anyway. But I think just being met halfway with things makes such a difference, and we just don't have that. It would be great if, things were different for us straight away when you got your diagnosis, but you're right, it's not like that. You go away and you're like, okay, I mean, the support I got after my diagnosis, I just got handed a load of leaflets that were all aimed at men, and that was it. And I was like, cool, great, that's it now. I didn't think about it again probably for another year and a half.
Okay.
So it is hard, and I think that's what people don't realise, that, a lot of autistic people do go through, a lot of suffering in different aspects. There's a lot of autistic people on the queer spectrum. We know that that's a fact, because I think autistic people don't like, being confined and conforming to things. We like to live on the edge of society, and I really feel like that for myself. I don't want to be boxed in, and we end up with a lot of mental health problems and physical health, like eating disorders, and that's been my experience, and all these sorts of things that are very common with a lot of autistic people. And it is great if you can get through that. People say to me, well done, what you've been through is incredible. Look where you are now. I'm like, yeah, but I'm still doing the work. I've been through years and years of suffering and pain and all these horrible things. Yeah, I'm the one that still has to do the work. And that is hard to sometimes take. And I do love doing the work, and I do love going to therapy, and I really would recommend therapy for everyone. I really do. Mm-hmm. It's really helped me so much. But yeah, it's I sometimes get upset about it, and I want to be moody and miserable and be like, well, I don't want to do all the work. Why can't people just accommodate me?
Exactly. You know? You've got to have that, like, every so often, just like, oh.
Yeah, I just want to have a sulk about it, and that's okay, because it is draining doing it all the time and constantly thinking, oh gosh, yeah, I need to think about this differently or do this. And yeah, it is hard work. Mm-hmm. So I think if anyone ever says you aren't trying or try harder, just be like, I have been trying my whole life, and I have been trying harder and doing this work. I think just because people don't see it, they don't know what's obviously going on in the brain. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a lot to sort of deal with day to day.
I feel like now might be a good point to like mention where people might be able to find you online if they want to, if you're comfortable saying like your social media and stuff, just in case people do want to kind of follow along your journey and stuff. Where can people find you? So
I'm just on Instagram, and my handle is @greenhouselex. So that's where you can find me. Mm-hmm. And obviously my story currently at the moment is on the National Autistic Society website and all that sort of side of it. Mm-hmm. As well, on all their social media platforms like LinkedIn, I think Twitter and stuff like that.
Okay,
so
those.
Yeah, so you can find sort of it pretty much anywhere. But yeah, my Instagram is, I was off social media for such a long time.
Okay.
For a very long time, and just because I was mentally ill at that point, I just got off it because it wasn't healthy. Mm-hmm. And I started an account, I think it was last year or maybe, just about my plants. That's how it started.
Oh, okay.
And talking about how they helped me with my mental health and just writing bits about my past with them and stuff like that, my journey. And yeah, so you can sort of have a look through some of the posts if you want. And there's a couple of reels on there I made. Like you can watch my hair transformation reel, which has been really popular. I'm amazed. Like everyone loves it. So
also you have a crumpet highlight, which
I do.
I was like, right, let's get on this.
Yeah, Crumpet's got her own little little TikTok video as well and stuff. I am on TikTok, but I don't do videos. I literally just go on to watch, so don't worry about that.
Okay.
But yeah, Instagram would be the best way. And if anyone ever wants to message me, I'm so open to talking about everything and anything. So, if there's anyone out there who wants to talk about anything that I've mentioned about, trans stuff or non-binary things, I'm more than happy to have discussions with people, because I know what it's like to feel that alone.
Yeah.
And lonely is a scary place to be. That lonely is really hard. So please reach out. And there is such a community out there. And even on the National Autistic Society website, they've got like the chat bit and stuff. Mm-hmm. And there is such a huge community that will welcome in anyone and everyone. So do reach out, because it is, there is help and support out there.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on and for chatting about yourself and the campaign. It's really interesting to hear. And like I said, I'll make sure to link everything that you mentioned in the show notes. But yeah, Great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you.